Morning, everyone. Thank you for being here to listen. Today, Beck and I would like to talk to you about a wonderful Red Cross co-design project which is helping change lives for the better. A project which has offered hope, dignity and purpose to consumers of mental health services in regional Australia by listening to the lived experience of those consumers and putting them in the driver's seat of developing solutions for them and others like them. It's a project which has made an impact on everyone involved: caregivers, friends, volunteers, Red Cross staff, and especially the consumers, which includes myself. Anxiety is my constant companion. In retrospect, it always has been. Growing up in Port Pirie, the warning signs were always there, but everyone, myself included, chalked it up to adolescence, a naturally frustrating and confusing time. In 2007, I was finally, thankfully, diagnosed with generalised anxiety disorder. It took a breakdown to get that diagnosis and the help I desperately needed to begin my recovery. 10 years later, my anxiety is more easily managed, but even today, especially today, it is a constant battle to resist urges that are detrimental to my health, relationships and success. I became involved in this project in April through my friend Carmen, who works for Australian Red Cross as a FAMS worker. Changes were coming to community-based mental health funding, and in response, Red Cross wants to develop support programs outside the NDIS for people who experience mental ill health and who are living in rural and regional communities. Port Pirie and its surrounds was chosen as one of the 3 project sites, and because of my lived experience with anxiety, Carmen asked for my help on the project. My response naturally was to panic. One of my triggers is helping others. I want to help, but physically I experience intense discomfort. So I delayed my response as a heated debate raged internally. I had 2 choices, which I agonised over. One, I could say yes and help Red Cross shape services in my community. However, this involved a leap of faith into the unknown, which is poison to the anxious mind. Or 2, I could say no and withdraw into my comfort zone. Saying no is habitual. It's easy. It would safeguard me from the terrifying prospect of public speaking. It would also mean letting down Red Cross, and more importantly, letting down a friend. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Marcus DeGilio. Sorry to Adam, I gave you the wrong pronunciation of my name. And I'm so very glad that I said yes. And I'm not alone. Here is what just a few of the consumers and staff involved have had to say about this co-design project.
Hope.
Unity for one.
Grounded, reflective,
collaborative, insightful.
I think it's inevitable.
innovative,
It levels the playing field
inclusive.
and it's fair.
Passion and caring.
Positivity and journey.
Tough. It's not always been easy.
It was humbling, it was sad, it was motivating and inspiring at the same time.
But it's also special as well, I think.
It was exciting and it was mentally stimulating and just a great thing to be part of.
Hope, unity, caring. These words stood out to me. To me, they represent the strengths of co-design. While consumers had good, honest feedback about co-design, we found that they didn't really have a bad word to say about it. And that's not because of loaded interview questions or strategic video editing. It's because of the co-design process itself and how it was handled. Tough and sad were reflections from Red Cross staff members Carmen and Anton. They're less of a negative assessment and more a reflection on the reality of the process. They acknowledge the courage and strength of the consumers who shared their stories, as well as the staff who were exposed to story after story after story of trauma and distress. The toll it takes on both parties is significant, yet that process was crucial for uncovering important insights into lived experience, the challenges of living with mental illness in rural communities, and more. So, just how did Red Cross and Second Road gain that insight? They listened to the consumers, and not just listened, they really listened. And us consumers, world-weary and with impeccable bullshit detectors, we responded in kind. The power of really listening really cannot be overstated, because great things are possible for everyone when you sit down and really, truly listen. I'd like to introduce Rebecca Cunningham, Red Cross Regional Area Coordinator for Port Pirie in the Mid-North, who will explain the co-design project in more detail. Please join me in making her feel welcome.
My co-design journey began earlier in the year, in the lead up to the full rollout of the National Disability Insurance Scheme. As we edged closer and closer to the rollout, my colleagues and I were concerned about the potential for a significant number of people suffering with mental ill health in the Mid-North region of South Australia to fall through the gaps and to be ignored by the NDIS. This included both people with undiagnosed mental illness and people currently receiving psychosocial supports through the Personal Helpers and Mentors program. My concerns weren't unique to Port Pirie or the Mid-North region of South Australia. They were shared with colleagues from across the country, in particular those delivering services in rural and remote areas where for most part few services are available. As a result, our region was signed up to be part of a national co-design project within Australian Red Cross, along with sites in Hervey Bay, Queensland and Kalgoorlie in Western Australia. As Marcus mentioned earlier, co-design is a crucial part of this project. But what exactly is co-design? Is it just the latest trendy buzzword? We've heard it a lot already during this symposium. Or is there more to it than that? In Red Cross, we believe the co-design methodology represents the best process to ensure that consumers and other stakeholders are central to our decisions about what we do, where we do it, and how we do it. Essentially, co-design develops solutions for communities in cooperation with that community. To create these solutions, co-design brings together three voices. The first voice is the voice of intent. That's us at Red Cross. Executive, management, senior staff, lean design teams, as well as external stakeholders. The second voice is the voice of experience. Carers, staff working in firms, volunteers, and importantly, people with lived experience, who bring both lived experience and specific knowledge about the communities that they live in. The voice of experience is crucial, and in order to make sure it's truly heard, we need help. And that's why the third voice is the voice of design. We employed the help of design experts from Sydney-based strategic innovation consultant Second Road to assist us with our co-design project. Co-design follows a 5-stage design wave, with the first stage being intent. During the intent stage, the focus in question, which guides the entire project, is set. This focus in question informs the discovery phase, during which stakeholders, including those with lived experience of mental health concerns, are interviewed. During May and June, we embarked on discovery. We spoke with 119 different stakeholders and consumers, including firms, participants, family members, volunteers, peer support workers, local service providers, local, state and federal government, and many more people within the Mid-North region of South Australia, Kalgoorlie and Hervey Bay. Through these interviews, we gained insights into each community and the experiences of living with and or supporting people with mental ill health. At the end of the discovery phase interviews, we captured over 3,000 clues, which informed the next phase, the invention phase, where the three key voices got together at Second Road in Sydney to brainstorm potential programs and solutions. We're still on this journey, with the prototyping phase currently underway and the implementation phase yet to come. While there's still a long way to go, I feel as though the impact that the project has had on every person who has been closely involved has been remarkable. To discuss the impact on consumers, I'd like to hand back to Marcus.
Thanks, Beck. Now, as Fergus explained, ultimately every design phase is aimed towards the end goal, the supports that will be created to assist the consumers. But before these possibilities had even been brainstormed, there was a noticeable change in the consumers involved in the project. Red Cross staff and Second Road consultants saw it, and as consumers we felt it too. It was foreign, it was wonderful, it was hope. To explore this further, we'd like to share with you this brief video.
I think that co-design is bringing back hope, and it's giving people an opportunity to have a say and to be heard. I saw people's shoulders lift and their heads lift, just that they've been asked for their opinion.
But even with mental health, having consumers involved, and they've recognised that now, and to make the place be a lot more user-friendly and turn us back into individuals. So yeah, Thank you.
In that listening, people started to have more hope.
Did you feel like you were listened to throughout the process?
Oh shit, yeah.
Now, as you've just heard, Greg does not mince words. When he says he was listened to, you know he was listened to. Like all of us, he was made to feel more than his diagnosis. Like all of us, he was made to feel that his contribution mattered. And like all of us, he expressed his gratitude at being truly heard. As Sarah explained, being listened to was the catalyst for hope and a noticeable positive change in the body language of consumers. But for some, this wasn't immediate. That was certainly true for me. After my intense and personal interview, I was exhausted and agitated afterwards. Yet despite those feelings and my usual defensive cynicism, I walked away impressed. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am a cynic. My bullshit detector is second to none, and I am incredibly reserved around strangers. So when I say that I was, and still am, dumbstruck at just how well these interviews were carried out, I want you to understand the significance of that. This was not a room full of people reading from a script or going through the motions. They disarmed me with care and genuine interest and got me to speak non-stop and candidly. My interview was incredibly cathartic. It allowed me the chance to reflect on my relationship with anxiety, and I was surprised at just how far I had come since my breakdown. It was also the catalyst for significant change. For the first time, I saw my experience with anxiety as more than a chronicle of suffering. Red Cross and Second Road showed me the value of my lived experience and gave me an opportunity to harness that experience to create a brighter future for others with mental ill health. As we will see in this next video, all consumers relish this opportunity to create positive change in their communities. Using our lived experience for the good of others, there was a dignity and a purpose to our suffering.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to the finish thing, because we really do have nothing, and well, not a lot of options, like Port Pirie and like Hervey Bay, you know.
Co-design, it made me feel good, happy that I was a part of that, to think that I was over there doing something for my people back here.
Having the opportunity to be able to fine-tune and be involved in the planning and delivering of a new program that is consumer-based has been an absolute honour for me.
Catherine is passionate about helping her community. She's also an expert at listening, conversation, and reading body language. I remember the Invention workshop in Sydney. It was an intense one-day workshop, so by the end of it, you couldn't realistically have met everyone. So before leaving, Catherine, still essentially a stranger, came over and spoke to me. She had read my body language like a book and gave me some advice that I needed to hear. The world needs more Catherines. That was actually one of the proposed ideas, to make more Catherines. And it was no coincidence that Catherine's skills became key components of most, if not all, of the proposed projects. Lastly, this co-design project has been an incredible opportunity for growth for everyone involved. I would like to share Carolyn's story. Carolyn is a consumer currently receiving assistance from the FAMS program. A FAMS worker is based in Port Pirie, but Carolyn lives in another town. Before the co-design project, Carolyn wouldn't go anywhere on her own. She lacked confidence within herself and had limited social and support networks. On top of this, she had never been to Sydney and she had never flown on a plane. But she was passionate about the project, and like all of us, she knew from the discovery interviews that Red Cross and Second Road valued her contribution. So she found within herself the courage to tackle these obstacles. She got on a plane, she braved the bustling streets of Sydney and engaged with a room full of strangers at Second Road. And we're glad she did, because she brought with her something no one else ever could, her unique lived experience. Carolyn now drives to Port Pirie by herself. We are all so very proud of her courage and growth throughout this co-design journey. As she tests herself in ways she could never have thought possible, we watch with excitement and encouragement. Beck would now like to share her reflections.
From a personal perspective, I think I really underestimated the level of impact this would have on me personally. In the Mid-North, we spent long days hearing traumatic stories of resilience, stories from broken people, and then we moved straight from one interview into the next interview and into the next story. Each person we spoke to gave us a piece of themselves, and in return I'm sure that I left a piece of myself with them. Debriefing was important, self-care was important, and the whole experience brought a team of Red Cross employees, Second Road consultants together as a united, committed and driven team. I might even go so far to say that the experience has forced us all to be so much more honest and open about our own lived experiences. It is true to say that through vulnerability, true growth begins.
And before I wrap things up, we have one last video. We asked staff, consumers, and Adrian, a senior manager from Second Road, for any advice for anyone who was undertaking their own co-design project.
Get in there, get your hands dirty.
Don't go in presuming you know anything about what's happening in that area.
The best outcomes for co-design come out of a process anchored in a really clear sense of purpose.
Don't lose sight of the focus. You've got your focusing question, and remember that throughout the whole process.
And it's going to be messy, and it's going to be muddy, but be comfortable with that.
Get the consumers involved, because who knows better of what the needs are than the consumers.
Reflect on how well represented they are inside your organisation, inside your offerings, inside your services right now. Co-design is something that lets you create a lot more value for those people by bringing them into a process of creation.
I'm not a health professional. I'm not yet a volunteer. I used to think that I had nothing to offer. Red Cross saw otherwise. They helped me to help myself. Now I'm driven to return the favour. But to do so, I must embrace my anxiety and my vulnerability. Vulnerability isn't valued in our society. From a young age, we're taught that vulnerability is weakness, and we close ourselves off. As we've heard time and time again in this conference, this is a stigma that must be broken down. From a humanitarian perspective, from a design perspective, from a personal perspective, none of us truly knows where this co-design journey will take us. To be honest, we don't have all the answers. We're vulnerable. And that's terrifying. But you know what? That's okay. I actually think it's necessary. Because if I've learned anything in my recovery, it is this. If you want true change, if you want true growth, you must put yourself out there and give it your all. Make peace with your discomfort and the prospect of failure. I want and need everyone with lived experience to know there is absolutely no shame in being vulnerable or asking for help. I used to think that being vulnerable and asking for help were signs of weakness. I suffered for that, and my relationship suffered too. But through this co-design project, seeing each and every consumer pour their hearts out, myself included, I now know that it takes incredible courage and strength. Whether you're a service provider, aid worker, consumer, spouse or partner, relative or friend, we all must be ready to listen. Listening, really listening, must become universal. So when a consumer, a colleague, a partner, a relative, a friend, or anyone, even yourself, when they cry out for help, please be ready to hear them. They will thank you for listening. Anxiety be damned, I will help others and I will listen. If I could prevent just one breakdown, it'll be worth it. Thank you.